Third important perspective which we are focusing at, social exchange and rational choice. Well, in this perspective, we look at people and their interactions. People act, and when they act in the presence of others. And when they act in the presence of others, the others might give their own reaction to first person's action. And that action leads again to some kind of response from the other party. So that is how the actions are exchanged. So through action and interaction, people try to, let's say, realize their interests, to achieve their interests. And we see that these actions and interactions are a means to the achievement of some goal, some interest. So without interest, maybe people don't have the action and interaction. So these actually, the goals might be instrumental in motivating an individual to act in a certain way. And when that person acts in the presence of others, he gets a response, and that exchange of action might lead to the achievement of the goal. So that interest or the goal might be an instrument, might be the means to motivate an individual, to move the person to take action. So the interests of the people are translated into actions. So we see that out of this interaction, who benefits from these? So who benefits from any system of interaction? So that act does not take place in isolation, that takes place in the presence of others. Other could be one person or group of individuals, and that becomes, let's say, chain of interactions, and that chain of interactions might be considered as a system of interaction which is required for the functioning of the society, for the smooth running of the society, for the fulfillment of the requirements of the needs of the individuals. So we see that people's actions are guided by their let's say, needs, and then they try to, let's say, adopt certain means, certain strategies, certain procedures, certain processes for the achievement of those needs through their actions. Now, these strategies might be adopted consciously or unconsciously, and we see that when certain actions are repeated over time, people might simply get conditioned to act in a certain way, maybe unconsciously. So to what extent these strategies are rational? Well, rational in the sense that a particular strategy could be considered as rational because it is efficient. It's an efficient way or means to achieve the interest or the goal. So how efficiently particular courses of action achieve desired results, then it depends. Did we achieve the goals? Are these interactions useful? If these are useful, then these are repeated, and if these are repeated, then they become some kind of pattern. So the assumption is that people more or less act rationally and on the basis of their interests. That's the main, let's say, thesis or the main assumption of this perspective. So we see that if the interaction is rewarding, then it continues to be repeated. If it is not rewarding, then perhaps the repetition of that interaction is not possible. So rewarding exchange of interactions are repeated, and these are repeated because these are based on the achievement of the goal. Achievement is a reward. So reward can be the basis of rational choice of entering into an interaction, or first of all taking an action, then entering into an interaction, and then perhaps I would say in the repetition of that interaction, which might result in the form of a pattern. So continual exchange of actions make, as I said earlier, make people conditioned. So first of all, they might be doing it intentionally, then overall it becomes part and parcel of their life, so they become conditioned. They don't have to look into those kind of things, and when these are part of their let's say life, then we can say that certain interactions, if these are repeated over time, these take a certain pattern. These become a certain style. Pattern may be considered a desirable way of interaction for the achievement of certain goals. So it enables sociologists to predict patterns of behavior on both small and large groups. So the focus is more on micro-sociology, and from let's say individual level of patterns, they might move up to group level kind of thing, from let's say direct interaction to indirect interaction, and these interactions might take between or among different groups or different collectivities. We see that Homans and Blau are the two prominent names in this perspective. So exchange perspective explains action by what works effectively for actors seeking to realize their interests. So what works and what does not work. And if it works, of course it is to be repeated, and what it doesn't work, it may have to be just discarded or maybe modified. And when we see that if it works, it is to be repeated. If it doesn't work, it has to be modified, discarded. Means every action or interaction has a logic, has a reason to back it up. It is based on rational. So there is rationalization. So actors understand those interests partly based on their previous experiences. So if the previous experience is, let's say, beneficial, satisfactory, that action and interaction is likely to be repeated. If it is not, then perhaps some alternative may have to be looked into. So what the actors are interested is the achievement of the goal. So for the achievement of the goal, they may have a mix of resources which they have at their disposal. So means some resources they may have, some they may not have. So there could be constraints as well. So with an accurate understanding of the interests actors pursue and the mix of resources and constraints they face, one can predict or explain the actions of the people. So that's the main thesis of this perspective. That is, the actions take place because they are satisfying, and if the experience of interaction is beneficial, then it can be repeated. It will be repeated, and repeated interactions take a certain pattern, and we see that when we act and there is a response, there is exchange of interaction, and there could be let's say exchange of, let's say, patterns of behavior. So later on we might see later with respect to the rate of exchange and things like that.